First, I saw Gavin O'Connor's first film, Tumbleweed, my first time at Sundance in 1999, and what he's managed to do in his 3 films, Tumbleweed's Miracle, and his newest, Pride and Glory, is to center on family and to show how family impacts the greater world, which is an unusual thing to see in films. Generally, you see how the greater world impacts families, and it's about how family, that dynamic, grows out into the world and what those repercussions do. And so we'll start with Noah Emmerich, who's joined him for all of his films, and Edward Norton, who's one of the troubled cops in this film, many troubled cops in the film, and it's co-writer-director Gavin O'Connor. Gavin, let me ask you about that family dynamic, because that's kind of an unusual thing where family radiates out of the center. You know, will the center hold for you? Where does that come from in terms of the way you structure the films?
It's unconscious. Someone had just mentioned this to me the other day. I'm prepping a film now that I wrote, and it's a similar theme. Here we go again, and I wasn't really aware of it.
But you didn't even write Miracle, and it's still that happens in Miracle. I mean, we're starting with Herb and going up from there.
Yeah, well, what happened with Miracle was that the original script was very different than... I started rewriting that movie and trying to make it as personal as I can for me, and you know, I looked at Herb as a guy who was this mad scientist who used his team as his lab experiment, and it just started to grow from there. But I did a lot of work on that script.
But it's interesting for me just in the idea that home is this place where you don't go for safety. I mean, home is just as chaotic as the rest of the world.
Well, that's... I mean, that's what I grew up with.
Really?
Yeah. It was chaotic.
Well, Ed, let me ask you, Edward. You're playing somebody who seems, in some ways, it's almost like a Western. You know, you have to be pulled back into this town as kind of sheriff again. And I wonder if there were movies that you kind of used or some kind of because he starts off as being kind of an archetypal figure in some ways almost.
Yeah, well, that's funny you said that. No one else has actually said that to us, that it was like a Western. But we talked about that. We actually, like, especially working backwards in the script when we were all rehearsing, and you know, we knew we needed to make our way to that bar in the end with Jimmy and Ray, and at some point I remember us talking and saying, like, so, you know, this is like the showdown at the end. You know, this is, you know, sort of you know, weapons on the bar and Irish style, like, you know, duke it out.
That was like an old John Ford.
It was, and the more we set it up, even when we worked on the scene, the more we set it up, I started sort of grinning. It felt like.
But even how we
like
shot it with when you coming over the bow of the road there, and everyone going in one direction, and you're walking towards camera.
Yeah, it had a
you know, going towards trouble while everyone else is running in the other direction.
But I think, you know, I don't. It's a very American thing, I think, to like. We make heroes. We've always made heroes out of, you know, guys who put the badge on and are kind of the insulation between chaos and everybody else. And I think maybe out of our Western heritage and you know, the chaos of frontier or whatever, but I definitely think we've got a hero myth. I mean, we've got a hero relationship with that idea of people who put the badge on and you know, defend everybody else. And I think you know, Gavin. The thing that was interesting to me in this script when I read it is it's as you said, it's got a very interior life. It's very much about family. It's very intimate in that sense, but it definitely also, I felt like it, consciously or unconsciously, it's like it was also to me, you know, a conversation at least about what, you know, what happens when when those badges have become institutional, you know, and we've kind of set up institutions to protect us, and it's gone away from being individuals and become institutions, and those institutions that are protecting us are providing cover for violations of the principles they're supposed to be defending, and that's, you know, that's been, without really a judgment about it, I think that's been part of the conversation in the United States in the last few years. We've been going through this huge crucible of scandals of, you know, the country being forced to question how far do we support going in the name of protecting, you know, ourselves, and so I had, you know, when I first read it, I sort of thought, wow, you know, this is functioning on the intimate level. It's functioning on kind of the classical level, like a Western, but it's also felt very like tuned into the zeitgeist in a way to me, and so those combo, when you get things operating on multiple levels like that, I think it becomes extremely interesting, because you can't play those metaphoric levels, but if it at all as an actor, but if it has the intimate level, you know, then you can root yourself in that and play it. And yet it's exciting to work on something that you can play down in its shoes, but that you feel like has is in a larger conversation, is part of a larger conversation, and I like that.
You know, one of the things, since we talked about this, it feels almost like a Sidney Lumet Western. I mean, when we see your character, he's got this serpico scar in his cheek, so all this stuff is, were you aware of all those levels too, that kind of sort of 70s thing and the family thing and the Western aspects as well?
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, it's great to hear you comment on that, because all those conversations we had throughout the process of making the film, you know, from the very beginning, Gavin started talking about the style and the integrity and authenticity of those 70s films, and how sort of, in fact, Sidney Lumet is sort of the godfather of the genre as it evolved in the 70s. And we were always striving for that level of sort of authentic grittiness, that almost wanting the audience to feel slightly voyeuristic for being there for some of these scenes, as if like, wow, we're not really supposed to be seeing this. Give it almost a slightly documentary feel. And also that was sort of one of our driving ambitions, was to have the cops, have the actual men and women of the NYPD see this movie and feel that it reflected their world, you know, if not entirely plot-wise, you know, accurate to whatever that they had experienced, but at least the flavor and the nuance and the essence of their lives hopefully would be reflective of some sense of integrity, so that they would actually say, yeah, you've captured something of our lives. That was always sort of our driving force. I feel like at the end of every day we sort of said, is this a movie, or does this feel like it is actually authentic? And if it was a movie, if it felt too movie-ish, we threw it away and started over again.
Is there an example of something like that you can think of, either of you, any of you guys, that felt like it felt too much like a film convention, you want to take it away from that? Can you think of something?
Well, hopefully none of that's left, so why bring it up?
I'm sorry, that's what I did.
We have just the cream left. But, you know, I felt like Gavin, you know, grew up in a family of cops and knows the world incredibly well, which is why I think we all trusted him so much, and why also the NYPD trusted him so much they were very supportive and consulted quite a bit with us on this process, and it always felt like they were our audience. You know, if we could please them, everyone else would follow. But the most importantly, we wanted them to say, this is not some Hollywood polished nonsense. This is actually, you've caught something of our world. And in the hope that if we did that, you know, it's the details and it's the universality of the specificity of that. If they liked it, other people would somehow feel like they're getting a window into something that I don't think you see that often since the 70s. You know, that sort of veritas in film. We wanted to avoid polish and shine.
Well, it's that opening scene, or one of your early scenes. You go to the murder site, and there's that handheld that's following you.
Right.
And you're sort of constantly off-center at this. The camera never really catches focus because the steady cam operator is walking behind you, bouncing as you're going right to that shot.
Yeah, that's like a 3-minute shot. I think that Gavin I can speak to better than I, but I know he had planned it out way before we started shooting. That you had this vision of that reveal of that scene. And it was great fun as an actor. I've never done that long a shot. I think it was a 3-minute shot. From driving 2 blocks away, driving 2 blocks to set, walking through the building, up a couple of flights of stairs, down a hall, into a room, around the room, back out. It was a very complex shot that we spent, 10 hours setting up.
We only got 3 takes, which was really frustrating because it took so long to get all the elements in place and the timing down. And then we were shooting at night, and the last take, there was just a sliver of sunlight was starting to crack on the horizon, so we knew it was the last one, and that's the one that ended up in the film.
Yeah.
Everyone stepped up.
Nerve-wracking
Because
for me.
one little thing goes wrong, and it's over. So
Yeah.
it was daunting. Yeah, I would love to have come back and been able to play with that a little more, but we only had 3 takes to do it.
No, it's a really